Have a great day. How to listen and use vocabulary fluently like a native. Make it a habit to listen to podcasts on a variety of topics anytime. And you will remember how to use vocabulary in everyday conversations.
An apartment lease. Do you live in an apartment? Did you have to sign a lease? Could you understand what you signed? A lease or rental agreement can be hard to read, but you should try to understand what you are signing. Your lease is a legal agreement between the owner, landlord, and you, the renter, tenant. A lease states the period of time for the rental, the amount of the rent, when the tenant must pay it, who pays for utilities, and any rules the renter and the landlord must follow. Some leases contain the following rules. Pets are not permitted. Renters may not change the locks without the owner's permission. Renters must pay a late fee if they don't pay their rent on time. The lease might even state how many overnight guests you may have and where you can or cannot park. Many of the rules in the lease are for the benefit of the owner. The owner protects his or her property by requiring a security deposit. Usually, a renter has to pay 1 to 2 months' rent as a deposit. The owner can use part or all of the money to repair any damage the renter causes. However, the landlord may not keep the renter's money for normal wear and tear. There are also rules that protect the renter. For example, owners must provide heat during the winter months. In most cities, they must put a smoke detector in each apartment and in the halls. The owner may not raise the rent during the period of the lease. When the landlord gives the renter the lease, it looks like an unchangeable document, but it isn't. Renters don't have to accept and sign the lease as is. If they don't agree to all the terms, they can ask for changes before they sign. For example, if you would like to have a pet, you can ask for permission by offering to pay a higher security deposit. There has to be trust between the landlord and the renter. When looking for a new apartment, if you have a bad feeling about the landlord, you probably ought to look elsewhere.
Starting life in a new country. You're about to go to college in the United States, or your family just moved to the United States. Your friends back home tell you it must be so exciting to live in a new country. But there are so many new rules and customs to learn. After the excitement wears off, there are many questions you'll have and decisions you have to make. Now you're here, and you find yourself in situations that are completely new to you. You might ask yourself, should I buy a car or use public transportation? Should I get a roommate? If so, how and where? How do I find a doctor? Where do I get insurance? How do I find a job? When and where do I tip? There must be hundreds of things you never thought about before. In addition to those practical things, you might also wonder about social differences. You might ask yourself, what topics are appropriate for making small talk here? What topics might not be so good? Why did the person I am talking to step back from me? Did I say something wrong? It might be that you are standing too close. People in the U.S. like their personal space. This is one of many unspoken rules that might be new to you. Besides questions you have about life in the United States, you're probably discovering that many Americans are curious about you. Of course, they'll ask you where you're from. Keep in mind that they might not know much about your country or culture. If you say Sri Lanka, for example, they may have no idea where this is. They might not understand the differences between different Asian countries. If you're from Brazil, people might think you speak Spanish. People who think that must not know that Portuguese is the language of Brazil. Just explain where you're from and what language you speak. With time, you'll learn more about American behaviors, and others will learn more about you and your native culture.